Hi, welcome to our first video. This is, I'm the Sisyphean Skeptic. This is Mrs. Skeptic. And today we're gonna kind of talk about our secular relationship. We see lots of videos produced by, other creators out there. Um, and I know of a few notable ones that talk about their Christian relationships, their theist relationships a lot. And we felt like it'd be a good idea to talk about our secular relationship and compare and contrast and, I don't know, just explore this space a little bit. So, welcome. Personally, I was never raised particularly religious. I wasn't raised overtly atheist. So my mother was raised kind of Unitarian, loosely. She didn't go to church a lot. Her mother was much more involved in the Unitarian church, so that definitely was an influence that she had. And Unitarian is kind of non-denominational, not heavily religious from that side. And my father, from his parents' side, were Christian, and I feel like he had a little bit of kind of a Baptist influence, to be honest. I feel like, because I know he's been to some churches like that while we were growing up, when we were going through my family's separation that happened. But I personally, my memories is that I didn't go to church at all, almost at all. I remember going to church once or twice for Christmas and Easter and some of those regular things, but that wasn't even a regular. It wasn't every year even, right? It was sometimes. I definitely kind of identified myself as not believing in a God, right? So it's not that I believe there is no God, right? The strong atheist, right? Just the regular atheist, atheist, non-theist, lacking a belief. That's definitely me. But we know there's a stigma, right? We all know this. There's a stigma with that, and a lot of people don't understand it. There's certainly a lot of negative connotations to atheism, and so that's why there's been in recent years the kind of atheist out movement, right? Being an atheist, claiming it, letting people know that it's not abnormal, right? There's so many of us in the nation that are nuns, right? Non-religious, and so we gotta represent ourselves. So I've definitely, it, after college, I'm an atheist, and I didn't shy away from claiming that, and I don't shy away from it now. Though a lot of the time it's just not relevant, right? Like,
it doesn't come up in conversation.
Exactly. It doesn't like, hey, I meet you, hi, I'm an atheist, right? unless that's what we're talking about. And I don't shy away from talking about that stuff. I like talking about that type of stuff. It's just, I'm not going to bring it up all the time. It depends on if you want to have that conversation. So tell me about it.
Okay, so I did grow up religious. My dad's side is predominantly Seventh-day Adventist. My mom was the main influencer of going to church, but we were never the types of people who sat at the table and blessed our food or anything like that. My father was a believer, but he believed more in the natural beauty, like, oh, God created this. So he wasn't definitely a big pusher of us going to church and stuff. He was the one who didn't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
When I came down for school to the college I went to, then I started to get back into church, and I went to a Baptist church. And I loved my pastor. He was a few years older than me. He was still learning about stuff and theology, and he had kind of that philosopher attitude about him. He wanted to have an honest conversation, like during the Wednesday service, which was more casual. That's where it was more like a Bible study kind of thing. He wanted people to ask questions and kind of have a discussion, and sometimes I wanted to raise my hands and ask a question. Most of the other congregation was definitely older, and they just wanted to hear the preaching. They didn't want to like question anything. So having him as one of my pastors was extremely beneficial. I appreciated it. And then he left. We got a replacement, and his replacement was more fire and brimstone, like everyone, believe, repent, and it was a Baptist church, so definitely,
More stereotypical in that
yeah,
way.
drinking, smoking, tattoos was not encouraged. A lot of the older ladies, pretty much all the women, always wore a skirt or a dress to service. We had women's study before the Sunday service, so I really appreciated being around older women who have gone through relationships and have been Christians for longer after I accepted Christ, which even then I was still unsure about. I just got out of a bad relationship with a Catholic, and I was kind of lost and I didn't know what to do. And it just happened that on that Wednesday service, the pastor was like, "Do you accept Christ?" Which they do after every single service.
I mean, it is a tactic for them to kind of prey on those people who are vulnerable.
Yeah, so I raised my hand and I accepted Christ. She really pressed upon me to do the baptism.
Mm.
And because you can't really fully accept Christ without baptism, or at least that's how our church saw it.
Well, certainly Baptists seem to care about baptism.
Right. And I did not like being pressured into that, but the elder lady, she just kept saying, "You have to do this, you have to do this, otherwise, like, all this work was for nothing." So I did it. I didn't feel different. It's not like how some people say, "Oh, you see a light" or whatever. It's I felt the same. I felt wet and embarrassed.
Wet and embarrassed. So I feel like that was a good primer on where we started at.
Yeah.
When we met each other. And there was a couple of things I wanted to mention based on the things that you had just said. So you were talking about baptism, and that reminds me of one story when I was growing up. I was at a daycare center, and I just remember that somehow this got brought up, that like, "Oh, I'm baptized, blah, blah, blah." And I wasn't baptized, and I mentioned that. And I got picked on. I got beat up.
Oh.
Yeah, I got bullied that day.
Oh,
because yeah, I was in, I'm going to say it had to have been early elementary school, like first, second grade or something like that. I don't quite remember now. I remember that as I continued to go, it wasn't always a problem, right? Like they forgot about it. We all got over it.
Yeah.
There was another one that I was reminded of, and you were talking about how your family, being more religious, you don't remember like praying over meals and things like that.
Never did.
And that was something that my father's side of my family did do.
Yeah.
Even though we weren't overtly religious, we basically never went to church apart from those very occasional times. We did do a little like, bless this food thing. They still do, exactly. When I go visit, they've gotten more religious since my leaving. So one thing that I always do is they say amen, and I'm part of it. Yeah, I say thank you, exactly, right? Like we're participating in the ritual. It's important to them. We're not going to be disrespectful, but I'm also not gonna participate in speaking to our imaginary friend in the sky.
Yeah.
Right. So, next thing, right? So that was kind of where we came from. And then we're kind of moving into how we met and how our relationship evolved from there. So, like you said, at that time you were in a more religious place in your life. So your family was on the more religious side, but not as religious as you could be, right? And then when you went off to school, you got more involved in religion.
Yes, I was looking for community.
Yeah, community is so important, and I think that's one of the best things that religious organizations do is provide that great community, right? That they do, we can't argue about that. So
see these people twice a week, you kind of get to know them, they invite you over for dinner, you socialize, you feel comfortable.
That makes a lot of sense. And in my position, I had gotten much less religious. I was an open atheist. If you would ask me, "Hey, do you believe in God?" I go, "No, I'm an atheist. You want to talk about it? I'm happy to talk about it." Right? So it's not a closeted atheist or anything. I'm not a get in your face, "Hey, why do you believe in God?" kind of atheist. I just was an atheist. So that was where we met there, and we were both in situations where we weren't super financially stable. We were in flux. It was our early young adult life.
Mid-20s.
Exactly.
After college.
Exactly.
Finding your way in life.
Exactly, right? So we're looking for where to go from here. And we met online.
Yep.
We met online. That was how we connected up. And I don't believe that our religious stances were forward in our things. Like, I didn't hide being non-religious and you didn't hide being Christian on our online profiles.
No.
It's just like our taglines weren't like, must believe in God,
Yeah.
or, must not believe in God.
Just having a certain mindset when you're meeting someone, because again, we weren't in the best situations in our life, so we were just looking for someone to talk to that's not in our normal circle. So our mindset was like, I just want to find a friend.
That's the key part, right? Neither of us was looking for the perfect mate, right? We were just looking for someone to meet, for someone to talk to go out with a drink, right?
Yeah.
Like, if things went well, we'd continue to see each other. If they didn't, we wouldn't, right?
And it was a lot less creepy than the other people I talked to online.
Well, yeah. So online, right? You never know what you're gonna get, right? We all know that we're here online. We know all the kinds of people we can meet online, and so I felt like we were great. Funnily enough, you were the first person that decided to go on a date with me. I just, I communicated with a few people, and within a couple of days, maybe to a week, I was like, hey, let's meet up for a drink, right? Like, I wasn't...
Yeah, we talked online for 2 to 3 weeks because it was around Thanksgiving, so
Yeah,
I went
got
back
in the way.
home, and then you didn't talk to me for a few days because you were with your family, and then you popped up like, hey, let's just meet. I'm like, yeah, okay, I got nothing else to do. I'm jobless.
Well, yeah, exactly. A lot of people, they spend a lot of time online making sure it's all perfect before they meet. And it's like, I feel like the initial stages is, are we at least interested in learning more about each other?
Yeah.
Then great, let's just meet. Why put this internet in between us?
Right.
So
I mean,
that was great.
Have a few questions that you talk about online and just, why not meet?
And the main thing that we always like to mention, the main thing that really got us, oh yeah, okay, let's talk to this person, was that she had a pun on her tagline, and I was the only person who mentioned the pun when I'm like, hey, that's a great pun, and we love puns. We like little stupid jokes like that.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
So we met, and during that first meeting, we just had a real conversation.
Yeah.
We talked about those real things, the things that you don't always talk about. Mm-hmm. We talked about politics.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about religion, and it became obvious from the beginning that we were not on the same page. She's a little more conservative. I'm a little more liberal, a little more religious, a little less religious, right? That was true from the get-go, but we're both respectful, and we're like, we want to learn earnestly about each other. We're not demonizing one another. That's a regular human being should be this way.
Just if you're going to get to know someone, I mean, what does it hurt to just have a talk? And I mean, he was very upfront, like, I don't mean to offend you or anything, and I just want to have an honest conversation. I didn't want to be like, why don't you believe in Jesus? You're going to hell. That's just like, I understand you weren't a believer and I was, but growing up, it's not like we went door to door to people. I believe more in educating people about what their potential views could be,
and
instead of shoving it down your throat.
And we both share that, right? I think education and learning and
information
has been important to us, and accurate information, right? What is the truth, right? The truth can be hard to identify, but those kinds of things are important to both of us.
Yeah. I mean, that I think helped a lot because none of us shoved each other's views in each other's face. We just sit and listen and talk.
It's a good place to start, right? That's where we came from. That's how we met. And we're looking forward to continuing to talk about how our secular relationship has developed and how we got to where we got and all of those kinds of things. So, it's just been fun talking about this, sharing this. We're once again, this is our start. We've got lots of ways to improve, of course, and we hope that you can participate with us. Leave us, comments. Let us know about your relationships, how they're similar, how they're different, how we can, make improvements and things like that. We're completely open to those conversations. So, like and subscribe, of course. And we hope you continue to join us in this this journey, this conversation.